Welcome to the cold hard truth on sports. I apologize in advance if I am out of line here.
Brace yourselves, boys. We're going in.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing?
I'm not reading. I'm just looking at the pictures. Welcome to the cold hard truth on sports.
Welcome, everyone, to another awesome week here of the Cold Hard Truth on Sports here on the GoLong Media channel on blogtalkradio.com. Bowl Mania is about halfway through. We are close to the New Year's 6, the New Year's Day 6 games that are coming up here in 5 days. 5 days. So I'll be previewing those and breaking some of those games down. We've had picks for the last week. I'll get into the picks for the college football bowl games because I know everybody wants to keep track of who the hell I think's going to win games. Just the degenerate gamblers, I guess. I don't know. Why do gamblers always have to be degenerate? Listen, some people enjoy playing games of chance. And if you like playing games of chance, go ahead. You know, I've always said that, I've never been a gambler, somebody that's a gambler, where I'll go into a casino or something like that, and I'll just throw down a bunch of money and risk. It's just throw a whole bunch of risk into something. However, I will take risks, and yes, I do like going to casinos. I do like playing poker. I end up just voluntarily donating my money through either blackjack or slot machines. But no, I don't gamble. I'm not a gambler. It's not my primary function to say, hey, let me go bet on something. It's just never been my thing. Strip clubs as well. Again, just never been my thing. I won't get into the whole theory on strip clubs, but still, it's just a couple things aren't my thing. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't go to any of these establishments. I'm just saying that it's just not my preferred bucket list of items or places to go to. But I do like casinos. I do. You can have lots of fun in casinos. However, when I go and I do decide to play these games of chance, I pretty much say, this is how much money I'm going to spend on this activity. The same thing, the same way I would do if I decided I'm going to go bowling. We're going to play 3 games of moonlight bowling, and I set aside a certain amount of money with getting food and beverages and shoes. Yeah, I have my own shoes, so yes, that's how you know somebody bowled before. I was actually pretty good at bowling when I was younger. Had a 257 average in high school. I lettered in bowling. 2 sports I lettered in high school were bowling and football. Yeah, so bowling was actually the only sport in high school you had to pay to even try out for. So I was obviously good enough to pay money to be able to try out to then make the team. And still to this day, in high school, I have never missed a single pin in tournament play. I'm perfect. Never missed a pin. 3 separate tournaments. Never missed a pin. We bowled Baker system, and I always bowled 5 and 10. Those are the 2 frames I would bowl, the 5th and the 10th. Still have not missed a frame. Obviously, I've been out of high school for a long time, but I own my own shoes. That's all I'm saying, I guess. The longest possible way to say I own my own shoes. So get into the NFL playoff picture, what we're looking at there. Sneak a little like I did last week into NFL draft and kind of combine and scouting talk. Some of it, and more so most of it, to preview and look at the Shrine Game, which is July the 20th. I will be at the Shrine Game again, the 93rd annual Shriners Shrine Game, benefiting obviously Shriner Hospitals. So if you are in the Tampa Bay area, or if you're traveling to the Tampa Bay area, or you've always just wanted to say, hey, listen, I would like to go to the Tampa Bay area, go the weekend of January the 20th, and you'll be able to catch a Shrine Game in the afternoon, which you'll probably see me on between the sideline and the box. I usually do both media and photography, so I'll be in both places. So I look forward to that. So, again, on social media, the one I put it out the most on social media is going to be at Matt Long Sports. And that's the one you can get to me directly. I do, along with some of our other contributors, do manage the CHT on Sports handle as well. But do you want to get me directly at Matt Long Sports? Same thing with tonight and anytime during the week. I do want to get a little bit into boxing. Billy Joe Saunders, the WBO middleweight champion, won in a very impressive fashion this past weekend. I didn't get into it too much previewing it. James did talk about it on our boxing show on Sunday, the Boxing Source radio show. It's every Sunday from 7:30 to 9:30. Again, with the holidays, some of these things kind of change. This show didn't. Some weeks it does, some weeks it don't. But I appreciate all of you that listen live. I see several of you are listening live day after Christmas, and we got a pretty good sized audience listening in. I really do appreciate that for you to listening over there on Blog Talk Radio. I don't see the numbers for the Spreaker app, and you can download the Spreaker app for free. It's like speaker, but with an R. Spreaker app. There's a star as a logo. If you notice, there's a star. And some of you are listening to the podcast version of this, either on SoundCloud. We do have the podcast version on YouTube as well. We are not doing a live YouTube feed or a Facebook live feed this week. We will have some podcasts throughout the week where we will use YouTube Live, Hangout, Google Hangout, whatever you want to call it, as well as the Facebook Live app too. So take a look at Periscope as well. I do have the first installation of the Tampa Bay Rays stadium situation. They did this past week trade Evan Longoria. He is their franchise player. He's been a cornerstone of that franchise for the last 10 years. He has 5 years left on that 6-year extension. And they were just looking to move a contract. Got a couple prospects, a couple players for now, one veteran in the process. Again, nobody's going to look at that as an even trade. And without Evan Longoria, the identity for the Tampa Bay Rays is going to be tough. They have Kevin Kiermaier, another good-looking guy, to fill in, to be that next face. But it's not the same. It's something that what had been the identity since 97, 98, with him coming up, has just been gone now. It's gone. So it's going to be something different. And hopefully this ownership can appreciate that. And coming into the new season, again, we're still in winter baseball, pretty heavy into winter baseball. The winter meetings were just here the last couple of weeks. So, seeing where we're at, spring training, how do they hype this? Because, hearing Dick Vitale, huge Tampa Bay Rays fan, lives in Tampa Bay, huge Rays fan since day one. Just shell out, like you said, in the clip, his YouTube clip, that he shells out money every year out of his pocket for premium ticket prices. He sits right behind home plate every single year. And for what? You pay major league prices for minor league baseball. Is the way he puts it, Moving Evan Longoria, again, he's a cornerstone player. Chris Archer is probably going to be the next guy to go. And in the midst, they're trying to figure out a stadium situation. Now, just so you understand, from my understanding, again, I'm trying to get some better clarification. I haven't read the new tax bill that was passed recently, but before it had to where professional franchises were not able to deduct taxes and use stadiums as a tax deduction. Whereas I believe they're able to do that now. They took that part out. So again, that could be a deal breaker if that's put in. So I'm trying to get. I was talking with Darren Ravel. If you guys don't know, he's a sports business guy, about some of the things that were within this new tax bill. Again, as of January 1st, excuse me, as of January 1st, the donation, if you put in a donation, right, to an organization and you were gifted tickets, okay, some buy season tickets, some donate and are gifted tickets. So the donation dollar amount was deductible on your taxes. As of January 1, it is no longer. That deduction is no longer available. So if you had season tickets and you made donations to franchises, doesn't matter what sport, and you were gifted tickets in the process, that's how it's put on your tax documents. When you report the deductions on your taxes, that is now no longer a deduction that you can make. Now, not everybody does that. Most people actually don't. A lot of people didn't even know about it till just now. But the new tax bill doesn't allow that. So they've closed out some loopholes on deductions that can be made. I don't know all of them yet. I haven't read the bill. A lot of people that voted on it didn't read it. But I'm trying to get a hold of people that have read it and understand this, because I'm trying to put together an article on how this is going to systemically affect sports fans. Because we do sports here, but I like the business side of things. I like talking about business, entrepreneurship. If I have a way that you can save money and deduct something on your taxes, I want to tell you about that. If you could save money, I want to tell you about it. Why wouldn't I? Let's share those sort of things. But as of January 1, you are no longer able to do that because the way the new tax bill is written. So, That's about as close as we're going to get to politics. Yeah. I see a few of you here on the messenger again. Well, I'll tell you what. This isn't a political talk show. I will talk about the sociology or the political side of certain things on the show. Just at a full disclosure, because a lot of people say, "Oh, you're a liberal or you're a conservative." Listen, I'm a moderate. If people want to know, full disclosure, I'm a moderate. I look at and I can understand either side. I know there's a lot of people that say, I just don't get this. I have a unique ability to really understand both sides. And I can empathize with each side's situation. That usually pisses off the other side, but empathizing with the side they don't agree with, which is perfectly normal. Just so you know, sociologically, people work and are more comfortable with the pack mentality, with the tribal mentality, is really how it's referred, the tribal mentality. You know, you're more apt to listen to, stick with, and agree with, and reflect agreements outwardly with those that are in agreement with you, with your tribe, than you are with the other side. And facts, and a lot of people say, oh, it's just facts. You know, you can't argue facts, but you can argue against facts. It's called law. They do it all the time. The law is someone's interpretation of it, just like religion. It's someone's interpretation of it. And those things are debated and argued all the time. And there's several facts that are involved, and people seem to look at the facts the way they want to. So, and again, that's where you have Republicans, Democrats. Those are people with facts, and they have their own tribes. And then you have people that are, you know, different sects of religion. You have your Catholics, you have your non-denominational Christians, you have your Protestants, you have your Seventh-day Adventists, you know, and that's just within Christianity. You have your Muslims, so you have your Sunni, Shiite. I mean, and that's not even to get into other Hinduism, Buddhism. You know, again, we're not. Again, that's expounding way beyond. Again, people as tribes. These are tribes. These are things that have factual base, yet at the same time are open for debate. So facts are very much debatable. And it happens all the time. And the one thing that you can kind of take from there's a book that was written. Hold on, let me grab the book. I'm gonna grab the book real quick. Now I have a hardback version of this book. And the version, this book was first published in 1937, right? 1937. And the copy that I have was reprinted, and this is a hardcover edition in November of 2009. Okay, so 1937, the original version of this book. How to Win Friends and Influence People. And let me, without you, if you've never read the book, you should definitely read it. If you've read the book, you should definitely read it again. If you read it so many times, you think you've read it so much you know it all, you definitely need to read it again. I do buy books. I don't read a lot of paper version of books. There are very few books that I've read paper, and that's usually because it's not available on audiobook. And because it's somebody that I care to read what they've written. Honestly. I mean, I have people that send me books, And some of them I've read all the way through. Some of them I've started and haven't read. And some of them I haven't even got to reading yet. And it's not my intention. I appreciate when people send me books. It's just, for me, sitting down and making time to read a book is difficult. It's just a time thing. That's all it is. You know? Plus, when I read a physical book, I get tired. I start to fall asleep. Not because the content is boring. I want to know the content. Just for whatever reason, I start to fall asleep. Same thing like our couch. We bought a new couch when we moved into this house here in July. And this couch, I don't know what it is about this new couch. It comes with a sedative. I swear, it comes with a sedative. I lay on the couch, I swear, for 15, 20 minutes, and I'm just... it's like I took a sleep aid just before I lay down, and then 15, 20 minutes later, I'm like dozing off. You know? Like after the show, I do some post-show work, try to get some stuff posted, and then I'm awake. After the show, usually. So I'll go to the living room and just to kind of get out of my office, to try to transition myself to my bed, I will go to the living room and watch TV. Usually not sports-related stuff. Try to get back away from sports. Have it feel like a healthy balance of life. So I'll go watch TV. Sometimes live. Sometimes I'll catch a rerun of Conan or the tail end of a late night show or something else. I don't know. Sometimes I'll just watch the news, flip through different news channels, see what's going on, right? And inevitably, in 15, 20 minutes later, I start to fall asleep. Now, you're thinking, okay, man, this is like 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, you're going to fall asleep there. Fair point. But it doesn't matter what time of day it is. I just seem to kind of end up, my wife's the same way. You know? Something about the couch makes us fall asleep. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's what it's made out of. Maybe it's a Chinese couch, and we'll find out years later it has some abnormal health effects on us. I don't know. But that's kind of the thing. But this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is definitely a book that it's much more than that. It is very much teaching you about people. And the keys in this book can help you be successful and can help you gain other things in life. But to kind of get back to what I was saying before, the one key thing to this book is that people, right, care about few things. And one of the first things that they care about is going to be themselves. It's survival. But just beyond that is their name. And it's not just their name, but seeing and feeling that they're appreciated. And that's kind of the bigger side of it, that they're appreciated. So, looking at the grander scheme of all these things put together, simply validating someone and calling them by their name shows enough interest in them that they should show you appreciation back in one form or another. So, But I want to get on with the show. I have a few other books I'm going to plug. No, I don't want. I'm not going to get into that one. No, I haven't even read all that one. I will. But anyways, I want to get on with the show. Appreciate you all listening. If you want to call into the show, you can. 347-237-5539. 347-237-5539 is the number to call in, as always. I was watching, who was that? Northern Illinois, who was in a bowl game and almost beat Nebraska, which was really, beat Nebraska, actually. They beat Nebraska, and that was kind of the one thing that set the wheels turning in Lincoln with firing the athletic director and then working on the process of finding their next and eventual head coach. Who the boosters knew who they wanted. The boosters have known who they wanted for several years now. And that was Scott Frost. A lot of them wanted him while he was at Oregon and saw what he was doing at Oregon. And they and some elected to wait. And that's where they went. They went for Mike Riley. It's funny. So I was watching. I tell you that I was watching this Trojan War, and it's funny because in Trojan War, again, this is a 30 for 30 special, ESPN 30 for 30 special. And at the beginning of Trojan War, it's kind of breaking down how, USC had a period of time where the school have struggled for 10, 12 years, struggled. And they went through a series of head coaches. I'm not going to go through the whole history. But they ended up coming down to a few head coaches. And funny thing is, one of them was actually had some ties to USC. He was a quarterback coach there in the mid '90s. Offensive coordinator. But at the time, he was actually with the Chargers as a coach he was the head coach of the San Diego Chargers for 2 years. Then ended up being a assistant head coach and defensive back for the Saints before he ended up in 2003 was hired by Oregon State, where he spent the next 11 years. Mike Riley. So he turned down. Mike Riley turned down the head coaching job for USC. And it was just funny. Not just because, this is a guy that kind of had been somewhat, again, I hate to use the term failed, but somewhat of a failed head coach in the NFL and in college, as a head coach, that is. So it's interesting. He was considered for the job. Again, John McKay was the guy for the longest. And then John Robinson. He did fairly well. I mean, he won. I mean, he had him in bowl games. All but what? 2 years? All but 2 seasons of his time there? I mean, I don't think he ever lost less than 6 games. Or ever won less than 6 games. John Robinson, maybe it's better. Hold on, can you pull that up? Can you put that on my screen? Yeah. Yeah, he never lost, he never won less than 8 games. It was kind of a situation, kind of like I mean, you come from John McKay. Again, this is why when you see, I saw Nebraska make this mistake, moving off of Frank Solich. This is why it's not alarming, because obviously USC did this. So during the 70s, 60s and 70s, the 2 most dominant schools through those times. I mean, Nebraska was in the early 60s, just like USC. They had some good teams in the 70s, but really came to prominence under Osborne in the mid-90s. Good teams in the 80s wasn't really winning it. But John McKay had some really tremendous teams, but his record was really like a roller coaster. But he was heralded at USC because he brought them titles, So, Robinson came in for, 7 seasons, never won less than 8 games, not really doing what they were looking for. They move off him. Ted Tollner came in, 4 years, gone. Larry Smith came in for another 7 years, gone. They tried bringing John Robinson back. That didn't go well. I mean, he ended up having a couple 6-win seasons there towards the end before they casted him off. Paul Hackett, another former NFL coach, just kind of a again, I hate using the term failed. Kind of a failed, meaning that he really didn't ever have any notable success at the NFL level. And then in 2001, they were looking at 2001, when they were doing their coaching search, they were looking at Mike Riley. And from what I've understood is they offered him the job, and he turned it down. Because, again, at this time, it's kind of like what you're looking at, somewhat of a situation we're looking at, kind of like with Tennessee. We just seen happen with Tennessee. But the difference is Pete Carroll was hired. The fans kind of revolted against Pete Carroll, writing letters, leaving voicemail, sending faxes. Faxing and voicemail, that was Facebook and Twitter. That was social media then. That was it. You couldn't get closer in 2000, 2001 to to adamantly getting to an administration than in a fax or a letter, you know? Yeah, you might get on the news locally. It's not going to make national news. And sure, you can go out with signs and picket, but people might honk when they go by. It's really not having the same effect as it did if you're getting lots of people faxing and mailing. Not emailing, mail, like physical snail mail. This is in the turn of the century, 2000, 2001. But again, social media didn't exist then. It didn't exist for another decade, truly. And this is what we had. That's what they had. And they revolted just the kind of a similar way Tennessee fans, I'm going to give it to you. You are special in your own way of finding a way to really, seriously, like, make people look at you funny. They did it in a way that they just were unhappy with it, and they made it known. It wasn't a deterrent. He was still hired. He was able to meet or beat two of Paul Hackett's seasons in his first season, going to Las Vegas Bowl and losing, ending with a 6-6 record overall and 5-3. But then just went on a tear from there. In 2002, 2003, 2004, 11-2, 12-1, 11-0. Obviously, we know they were where the season was in 2015, where they had to, or 2005, they had to vacate the wins, which is the dumbest thing ever. I don't know how you can vacate wins. That is the dumbest penalty. If you vacate wins, then you're vacating. Obviously, they vacated, games. Does this mean Texas vacates games too? I mean, if they lose out, does this now mean the opponents that they face lose out? No, it didn't. All their opponents get to keep that win or loss. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's one-sided like that. Really stupid. Obviously, Pete Carroll did well. And again, USC, since Pete Carroll has arrived, all coaches included, all coaches since Pete Carroll has arrived have not won less than 7 games in a season. That's Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's first season. That was the last time they had less than 7 wins. So Pete Carroll arrived 6-6, and since then they've had 7 or more wins. That includes Kiffin went 8-6, 10-2, 7-6, and 10-4 in the season he was fired in. Sark went 9-4, 8-6, and then Clay Helton, who filled in for him, getting that interim season 8-6, ended up going 10-3 last season, and they're 11-2 this season. So SC hasn't fallen off far from where they've always been somewhat relevant throughout this time, never really moving up into the position where they're really a prominent national team. Again, it's a lot like the story with SC in the field. SC is back. It's kind of been the same thing with Miami, where they've done well or they've gotten close. It's just not enough. So it's going to be interesting. It's always when SC isn't good, when Miami's good, Nebraska's good. When you have those 3 teams on the East, the Midwest, and the South, when those 3 teams are good, college football really does resonate. I'd throw Michigan in there, you know. Michigan's good. You know, it really is resting. We're getting closer to that point now, I think. Well, we'll see probably next season. So, but it's all Mike Riley. That's kind of where I was going with this. Considered as a head coach. I thought it was kind of funny. He just won because this is a guy that just got fired from Nebraska for some subpar seasons, who didn't do a ton at his time as a head coach at Oregon State. Had a couple national ranked seasons, never competing for a title, you know, for his time at Oregon State. And even during the time he was there, I don't even think they didn't even win the Pac-12. He never even won a division of the Pac-12, even while he was ranked. They've been in since 2011. They've been in that North Division of the Pac-12. Conference championships. I take it back. Dennis Erickson was the head coach. They went 11-1 in 2000, the year or so before. Again, Dennis Erickson left in 2002 to go be coach for the 49ers. So he left for the NFL. That didn't last long. 49ers owners don't keep. If they don't think you're going to be good, you don't stay around a long time. And even those that are good don't even stay around for a long time. But Dennis Erickson was the last. It was Pac-12. It was 2000. They went 11-1, which was the last time they've had really a notable record for football. So, Dennis Erickson was actually they was actually the big thing there. And again, Mike Riley might have been some of that benefactor. Because 2003, 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, missing 10, 11, 12, 13, all went to bowl games. Riley won all but 2 of those bowl games. And against, again, 13 being against Boise State, lost by a slim margin at Alamo Bowl to Texas. And a funny, Notre Dame, that actually he had faced and he beat Notre Dame in the Insight.com Bowl, Sun Bowl. They beat Missouri, Maryland. They beat in the Emerald Bowl, Sun Bowl. They beat Pitt. It's a 3-0, a very low 3-0 game. It's like a baseball score. So it's funny, you know. It's a lot of success as far as bowl wins. Just thinking that, you know, he never, again, some of the benefactor of what Dennis Erickson did for the time that he was there at Oregon State. He was a bit of a benefactor, and he was able to build off of that. And he's from 1999 to 2002. He was the head coach for the Seahawks before that. So it's amazing. But what I thought was funny is also because Mike Riley had hair. He had hair then. He does not have that now. Not in that capacity. So it's interesting just to see how coaches, who was on a stride and who was just stroking it then and doing things right then, and how people have changed and just aren't now. I mean, Mike Riley went from being a head coach, one of the more storied head coaches outside of Dennis Erickson for Oregon State, And then turning around, going to Nebraska and it's just not working out. You know? Just simply put, it not working out. Despite Mike Riley feeling like it was trending in the right direction. And he felt like it was going to get better, which I think at this point, I don't think that there's any other direction it could go than getting better. I mean, Nebraska has this season had the worst record in the last 50 years. 70 years? I think the last 70 years. So it's deafening to see, you know, that kind of results. I'm thinking, you know, at somewhere, you think, you know, where do you even think about keeping your gig? So, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. I mean, Slim lost to Oregon, lose to Northern Illinois, bombed down by Wisconsin. Again, that Wisconsin game was a football game till the last 9 minutes. Ohio State was never a football game. It was a blowout. Losing to Northwestern at home in overtime shouldn't have happened. Blown out by Minnesota shouldn't have happened. Honestly, they had a winnable game there against Penn State. It kind of fell apart on them. Quick. And then a blowout loss to Iowa. It just, again, these are just games. When in the last 4 games you're giving up 54, 56, and 56. They gave up 54 points or more in 4 games, right? And they gave up 36 or more points in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. If I take that down just one notch to 31, there's one more. Like, when over half of your games, when 2/3 of your games, teams are scoring 31 or more points on you, it's just not working. It's just not working. And I can't look at the players and say, you're doing something really wrong. Do the players have to perform? Yes. And in college, has to be more leeway. There has to be more leeway. All these guys are raw. All these guys are raw. They're not professionals. You can't expect the highest result out of college football players. You just can't. You know? When 2% of these guys actually become professionals, you can't expect that. Because what as consumers you've said is, oh, they can't be amateurs. They can't be amateurs because we pay money to see them. Okay, they're not amateurs, so why don't you watch arena football? Why aren't you subscribing to the Canadian Football Network? I'm waiting. Take some calls on that. 347-237-5539. Why we're not clamoring over Canadian football or arena football or indoor football or one of the other dozens of professional, semi-professional leagues. Why aren't they clamored over? Why aren't we putting time in it? Why did the UFL fall flat? You're telling me that only thing that works is NCAA and NFL. That's what you're telling me as consumers. That's what you tell me as a consumer. It's not about the quality of the players you see. It isn't. That's not what makes them professionals. The NFL are professionals. Various parts of the year, certain games of the year are down year over year. Where last year was election cycle, this year's residual. So 2 years. Again, historically, this isn't abnormal. There's dips and ebbs and flows. Pretty abnormal cycle for a lot of things that are going on in politics. And that's reflected in how we view television. NFL is still the number one television program on 6 different networks or streaming channels. So you can't really say that it's dead or it's imploding or it's in big trouble. You know, ESPN is in bigger trouble on those ends than the NFL, and I don't see ESPN going away. You know, I see a lot of people trying to say the NFL or ESPN is dead and they're losing everything, but I'm not buying into that at all. They're not losing everything. So they'll figure out a way to, and buying assets. By the way, the assets that were bought by Disney, they bought 21st Century Fox television. So that means Simpsons, that means Family Guy. You know, they own that now. They own it. Also, they bought Fox Sports Regional. So all you people watching in Florida, I know specifically for Florida, also for I know this for Dodgers fans, the Dodgers, Rays, Marlins, Lightning, Panthers. You guys are all Fox Sports Regional channels. The Magic, the Heat, that's all owned by ESPN now. All of it. And that's $22.4 billion they're bringing in there. That's a huge asset. That's the value there. So acquiring and moving around assets is a big part of the way business works. And you can't say, you know, as much as people want to sit back and say, oh, the ratings. Listen, Disney's not going to fall far. And if those of you that watch the stock market and you want to buy independent stocks, when you see Disney's dropping, if ever you see their stock falling, go and buy it. Go buy it. And if you own their stock and you see it falling, go buy more of it. Disney's not going to fall far. All right? It just won't. They will innovate. They own 60% of Hulu. And they're working to acquire the other 40%. They're a majority stakeholder in Hulu. Right? They own 29%? Like 29%. Then they just acquired 31% from 21st Century Fox. They are the majority stakeholder in Hulu. There was already talks about them pulling their content from Netflix, and now then this freak out and a fall in the stock price of Netflix, the market freaking out and reacting to it losing Disney's content. You know, it's not something you should be freaked out about. You know, Disney Disney's going to make things work. Okay? I know a lot of people don't think so, but I mean, listen. Disney owns ABC, so that's Notre Dame football. They own ESPN, right? So that's the SEC network, the ACC network. Could be. Well, they do own half of the Big Ten. Monday Night Football, wild card NFL games, the NBA, and Major League Baseball. All right, so that's that. They also, obviously, Disney, they own Hulu, the majority stake in Hulu, 60% there. They own the History Channel, National Geographic, Nat Geo, Pixar, Lifetime. Anything valuable there yet? Have I missed? Playdom, which is essentially streaming. They own Marvel. All right. By the way, 21st Century Fox, when they bought movies, remember how they just ended up putting and releasing this ride in Disney June of this year? What was that? Was it Avatar? Oh yeah, Avatar. Do you know who owned that? 21st Century Fox. Now they own the movie rights to Avatar. So some of that residual that they had to pay in licensing and marketing that was going to 21st Century for doing the Avatar ride, now they're keeping. They're paying to themselves. Again, I know a lot of people don't understand or see the bigger picture, and they're willing to just listen to whoever's has a loud mouth and is willing just to keep talking and repeating themselves over and over again. ESPN is dying. ESPN is dying. ESPN is dying. The NFL is dying. Horrible, horrible numbers. ESPN, they're dying. They're all dying. No, they're not. They're going through normal ebbs and flows. But top corporations, top companies like this, they stay there. They stay intact. You know? Will there be a time, or could there be a time where the NBA is a higher commodity than the NFL? It's very possible. The liability risk is much lower. There's more games in a season. It's an international sport. It's an Olympic sport. So, yeah, definitely I could see it being at some point in time where the NBA is a higher commodity than the NFL. You got fully guaranteed contracts, a system, a collective bargaining system that seems to be somewhat in the favor of players, and they were able to kind of work out how the season, they added a week to eliminate the amount of home and homes or back-to-back games that they had. Not home and homes, but back-to-back games to limit some of the jet lag from the travel that they have. So yeah, definitely. I'll get a little bit more into the NBA later on in the show, but NBA could theoretically end up being a higher commodity than the NFL. Currently, it is the NFL by a very large margin. But they do have more overhead when it comes to players, when it comes to liability, when it comes to equipment, when it comes to potential risks involved with lawsuits and stuff like that. Obviously, because, again, it's a more violent game. And we've seen some of those lawsuits that have been settled here in the last couple of years and been paying out with the CTE cases. Is that going to change? No. There'll probably be more settlements and stuff to come. But for the large part, NFL players, people playing American football, understand what they're doing and what they're getting into. And it's a choice. Are there going to be some kids that might have said, "Hey, I don't want to play football now. I'd rather play baseball and get a guaranteed contract, or play NBA, get a guaranteed money, more guaranteed money, less likely to have risk on my body, my person. Maybe I'll play soccer. I think soccer on a world stage, maybe I'll have more success in soccer. I can build a bigger brand. I'll grow with the MLS as it becomes more and more of a sought after and a legitimate league in the world for professional world football, soccer. Yeah, there's going to be some of those kids. But as of right now, the great majority, that ratio of top athletes are still going into football. Will that need to shift? Well, I don't know if there needs to be such a large shift. And again, it's not about the best. It's about enough of very good athletes. It doesn't have to be the best per se. And what I would say, and that your little league coaches, your AAU coaches, your high school coaches, some small college coaches might selfishly tell you as an athlete, stick with one sport. Stick with your sport. Master your sport. Listen. Yes, more time doing an activity over and over again can help prepare you and make you better at that activity. But also, because it's a physical movement, the same repetitive motion, we've seen it for years. It was a long time during factories. What we started seeing with factory workers is a lot of carpal tunnel. Same thing with office workers. People are sitting at a keyboard all day. Carpal tunnel syndrome. And we're starting to see the same things with pitchers and their elbows and their shoulders, particularly their elbows. We start to see this with running backs and their knees, linemen and their knees. High impact, with head injuries in football. So there are going to always be health repercussions to playing a sport or doing repetitive activity. One thing that it's been shown to not only help save something, you can take a break from playing a sport to play a different sport, will help out. So if you go from playing football to baseball, you're using the same similar muscles in different ways. The same way if you go from playing American football to playing soccer. Finding out ways, play basketball. Switching up your sports and being more diverse with the sports that are played. It not only, I'm telling you this, not only will it make you better at other sports, but it's going to improve your IQ. And that's a fact. Okay? Different kinds of IQs. Okay? There's obviously motor function, and how your motor functions work are one type of IQ, one type of intelligence. Maybe you're not a good reader. Maybe you're not good with vocabulary. But out of the physical movements, the athletic side, that is one type of intelligence. And the more sports you play, the more you diversify what you do, and the higher IQ level is. So this is how, I'll go back to this. I talk and those of you who listen to the show, I don't talk about hockey. I really don't watch much hockey. It's just because I watch a lot of football, American football, NFL, college football, and I'm preparing for throughout the season, for the postseason, for the draft, the combines, the Shrine Game, which I'll be at this year, January the 20th, be in Tampa. By the way, throughout that week, stay tuned on my Instagram and social media. I'll have some exclusive footage and stuff up on the website and on social media, particularly for that. So stay tuned for that stuff. Also the NBA. So football and basketball, and then also boxing. So those are the three main sports that I cover and I'm involved with. Right? So I don't, again, when it comes down, just like I said at the beginning of the show, I get lots of books. People send me books, and ask for plugs and, hey, read my book. And it's great. I love it. Thank you for sending me your books. I appreciate it. Keep sending your books. Some of them I read all the way through. Some of them I read part way through. Some of them I haven't picked up yet. I have a couple here that are still in the box. I've opened the box. I've opened the box. I know they're in the box. But I've left them in the box that they came in because I haven't had time to pick them up and start reading it yet. And again, it's not a knock on the author at all. Not at all. It's just I haven't had time to read that. Now, had they sent me something in audiobook, I probably would have been done with it. Because an audiobook is usually anywhere between 2.5 to 10 hours, just depending on the book. And I listen to two things in my car. My kids aren't in the car. There's two things that go on in my car. Sports talk and books. That's it. It's the only two things I listen to. I don't listen to the news in my car. No, I don't. There's not a variety on news. Unless it's a news update on sports radio, which I get. That's nice. I'll come home. I'll just flip through the channels. I'll pick several different news networks. I'll watch C-SPAN. Listen, I will watch C-SPAN multiple times before I listen to a radio news show. I do actually like C-SPAN. I do, yeah. I do. I watch C-SPAN, all three channels. There is 3 C-SPANs, yeah. So, but that's just, again, sometimes I get to them, sometimes I don't. NHL's not one of them I get to. But I show up as a guest on other shows, and sometimes that host wants me to talk about hockey. Usually it's, hockey, a lot like baseball, is very localized. Similar demographic as mixed martial arts, which is understandable. Mostly men around 35, 18 to 35, younger generation. But I'll talk hockey, and I'll talk intelligently about hockey. I've never played hockey. I don't watch a lot of professional hockey, so I'm not going to get too nuanced. So if somebody wants me to talk about a specific topic, I'll do my research. I'll listen and I'll talk to people who do watch lots of hockey. So this way I can give intellectual insight into the topic. I will go watch hockey games to prepare for that particular interview, just simply because I know that's a topic. So if I'm on tomorrow morning on a show in Tampa Bay, and they want me to bring up the Lightning, I'm gonna watch tonight's Lightning game, the night or 2 nights before that within that week, and understand what they've been doing, what has been their struggles. Because breaking it down on a sports level is not tough for me. If you're talking X's and O's, I can talk hockey all day, X's and O's, because at the base of it is sport, it's strategy. I get that. I can tell you who is a good athlete. I can tell you who your best players are. And I can never watch sport as a fan does. And I can tell you these things. Maybe it's a gift I have. But that's just it. But also, I can tell you that when you look at hockey and you look at some of the difficulties that maybe they'll have in hockey are not that unfamiliar as I see when I played and I watched the NBA or college. I played college basketball. I didn't play in the NBA. College basketball. So basketball and NHL and hockey have a lot of similarities when it comes down to the X's and O's of it. So I can relate to certain things that are happening and explain, what are the problems. If your goalkeeper, the goaltender, is having problems with pucks sneaking in, and you always seem to have a couple of your, a defenseman or something, a wing in front of you when the puck is coming on, it's maybe all good and well, meant to want to help defensively, but if you're blocking the line of sight of the goaltender, your goalie can't see. That's called physics. That's not sports. That has nothing to do with, hey, you watch a lot of hockey. No, the guy can't fucking see. You make a better door than a window, buddy. That's simply what it is. It is not a huge, there's not large analytical side to you make a better door than a window. It just isn't. So, I don't talk a lot of hockey. Rarely ever. But if I need to talk about hockey, I will. And I'm going to make sure I give quality, intellectual, important, relevant content. Otherwise, I don't talk about it. That's why most shows don't talk about boxing. And that's why Stephen A. Smith shouldn't. Stephen A. Smith kind of pays attention to boxing, but he should never talk about boxing. Stephen A. Smith is not a boxing analyst. He's a mouth. I'm going to repeat myself. I let it marinate with that pregnant pause. Stephen A. Smith is not a boxing analyst. He is a mouth. Mouth. Mouth or mouth. Either one. He doesn't know boxing. He thinks he does. He wants people to think he knows he does. But anybody that understands even a little bit of boxing just wants Stephen A. Smith to shut up whenever he starts talking about boxing. So it's a great segue into boxing. And so let me bring on the editor, our boxing editor. He's also the host of the Boxing Source radio show you can hear every Sunday from 7:30 to 9:30 right here on Blog Talk Radio, Mr. James Bell. How you doing tonight, James?
Well, I wholeheartedly disagree, and I am utterly disgusted that you think that I am not an expert on boxing. I continuously work with Max Kellerman, who gives me everything I need to know about the sport. Oh, my bad. What's going on?
It is indubitably, inevitably, ridiculously. I don't know even where to go. I don't know.
It is utterly and unbelievably ridiculous that you would even say that I was even have any idea of what I'm talking about in boxing.
Why is it every time? It's like the last two fights that I've seen him involved with was this past fight. Again, I can't believe it. I cannot. It's just like, dude, shut up. But Manny Pacquiao, that's really the one that has set me off. This is the biggest robbery. I can't just listen, man. You're not helping boxing. You're hurting boxing. You know, if he spent half his energy, if he spent half the energy he spent on bitching about the outcome of Pacquiao Horn as he could have spent on plugging, you know, kind of the, you know, right within that time frame, you know, Bud Crawford's fight, maybe ESPN would have got better numbers on Bud Crawford's fight. Seeing how Bud Crawford right now, I would say outside of Andre Ward, again, who's retired now, is probably the pound for pound best fighter in the world. Yes, I know some of you are saying, "Oh, I thought you would say Vasyl Lomachenko." No, if Terrence Crawford and Vasyl Lomachenko fight today, I have Bud Crawford winning that fight, and that's not a fanboy thing. It's just he's not going to stand orthodox or southpaw or do any one thing against Lomachenko. Lomachenko is probably the most technically sound, best footwork boxer I've seen probably ever. Like, you know, within my adult life of watching boxing. Bud is not far behind him, and he can do it orthodox or southpaw, and he still has power, moving up in weight, and I have no issue with him fighting at 147. It would be a very interesting fight, but I think because Lomachenko has a tendency to start out fight slower and turn it on in the 5th, 6th round, like most greats always have, I think that's where he could lose ground or end up getting knocked out. So that's, I don't know, but get that out of Stephen A. Smith. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just something to me when they could, you know, put somebody up there like Stephen A. Smith as a guy to talk about boxing, but, you know, end up putting Teddy Atlas over to the side, or a couple of other guys that they've had covering the sport over the past few years, you know, not be a part of their television presentations, whether it's on Top Ranks boxing or on Golden Boys boxing card. They don't, you know, have those guys that are, you know, that have been part of the sport to be featured on these television presentations that they have. And I don't understand it at all.
Shout out to Eric Mulvaney of HBO Boxing. If you guys, outside of the boxing source, of course, HBO Boxing podcast on SoundCloud, awesome podcast. I listen to it at least every week, at least once a week. Sometimes they'll have 2 or 3, depending on how many fights they have over the weekend. Sometimes they'll have 2 or 3 podcasts. Awesome podcast. So if you haven't listened to it, definitely go check out Eric Mulvaney and Kieran Rasmussen over on the HBO Boxing podcast on SoundCloud. So shout out to them. They do a great job over there. So I would much rather hear both of them. And the funny thing is, Kieran isn't by trade a broadcaster or writer. He's a photographer, but he does a great job at all three. So, but by trade, he's more so he's a photographer. But does a great job over there. So, and they've been covering boxing for both of them for a very long time. So, I mean, just think of it, like, how many other people, like, just think Roy Jones Jr. And I know some people don't care for Roy Jones too much as an analyst. He entertains the hell out of me. He always has something. If it's not just entertaining to hear because it's funny, and because he's making a point, it's clearly true, but it's still funny, or it's something that is actually pretty deep when it comes to breaking down boxing. I think he does a really good job. I don't know. Are you a Roy Jones guy?
Well, as far as like his commentary is concerned on the HBO boxing telecast, I kind of like take a kin to him there on HBO. I wasn't necessarily a fan of him while he was boxing. I kind of like favored towards guys like Cornell Sweet Pea Whitaker and Bernard Hopkins. But when he went on, on commentary on HBO, I kind of like took a liking to him on HBO while he was commentating, which, kind of like goes into one of the former boxers that ended up being a commentator that I didn't like while, he was a boxer, but, favored him as a commentator, and that's Lennox Lewis. Lennox Lewis was also part of the HBO boxing commentator crew at one point, and, gave his insight on there, and he was a welcome addition to their team during the time they had him.
I've never gotten used to seeing him talk, like hearing and seeing him talk, especially seeing him talk, because when you see Lennox Lewis and then you hear Lennox Lewis, and if you had options and you've never seen or heard Lennox Lewis talk, if you took a voice and matched it to the picture of what made that sound, I don't think many people match that voice to that picture. I'm just saying. And it's always been kind of, obviously he's British. That, that's part of it. But it's I don't know. It's never sat right with me. But yeah, his commentary's been, and another guy's done pretty well. Hunter. My mind just went blank.
Who, Andre Ward?
No, not Ward.
You talking about boxers that are on the commentary team?
Yeah,
in general.
Yeah, bald head guy. What's his name again?
Well, the other guy that I say is quality. That's a former boxer that recently retired or put himself hung up his gloves. Is Paulie Malignaggi. I think Paulie Malignaggi is probably one of the best out there as far as like giving his input on what's happening in the fight. As a backup analyst, while they have somebody there like a Brian Custer or someone as a play-by-play person there on the Showtime team, but with Paulie Malignaggi there, it kind of like makes it better. I like Showtime's team way more than HBO's team because they have Al Bernstein there, one of the most respected guys in the boxing scene as far as like boxing writers and commentators are concerned, and then you have Paulie Malignaggi who gives like all-important analysis pretty much all the time.
I'm trying to find it. Man, this is hurting my feelings. The guy that fought Pacquiao three times, right? 3 times?
Oh, Timothy Bradley.
God damn it. Hunter. Jesus. See, that's called a Freudian slip, ladies and gentlemen. I like Timothy Bradley. He's kind of like the Tony Romo, of boxing. It's fun to listen to him because he sees a lot in the ring, and his color commentary I think is really spot on because he'll start to notice things and he brings stuff up during the fight. Again, a lot of boxers can do it. Paulie Malignaggi does it really well too. Roy Jones does it really well. But those color guys, that's one thing I think has always made a good quality for a color commentator and analyst is they can tell you while it's happening or just before it happens. Like Tony Romo will literally, some people hate it, some people like it. He'll literally say, hey, listen, this is about to happen. They're going to run the ball this way. The defense is going to react like this. And then you watch it happen. It's like, holy shit. He's like a Rain Man. You know, it's like that's exactly what happened. It's like completely the opposite of John Madden. John Madden would tell you what happened after it happened in the most basic way. You know, like, and that Frank Caliendo always did the great impression of him. Like, he's like, if there's a flag, that probably means there's a penalty. You know, okay, yes, the Captain Obvious, but
if there's a flag on the play, then chances are somebody did something wrong on that play, and that forced the referee to throw a flag on the play. I really remember that.
Yeah. It was like,
and then boom,
Pat Summerall. Thanks, John. You know, Pat Summerall.
Yep.
That.
Well, here we are, 1st and 10 at the 35-yard line, and then he had John Madden there. I'm beside him.
If they hike the ball and nobody calls timeout, then it'll probably be a legal play. Thanks, John.
Yep, exactly. Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's funny. Last year for the Outback Bowl, two guys I know, Jack Harris and Derek Sharp, called the game, which I believe they're both calling the game this year too. What was cracking me up, because Jack Harris, those of you that are not familiar with Jack Harris, Jack and Derek actually did play-by-play color commentary for the Tampa Bay Storm for a while, for I think 4 or 5 years together. And Jack went off, wasn't doing it, and it ended up being Derek and Ian Beckles. So, who also worked together, and I interned for all of them, by the way. And Jack and Derek worked in the Outback Bowl this last year, and they have in the booth, they'll have in the media, the press box. Basically, you have like these several little office cutoffs that have views, their own little pocket cut off right in the middle, that are broadcast for radio, television, stuff like that. They have blocked off from the other part, media desk. So they'll have these long 2-3 rows of long desks that just overlook the field that are media. Okay? And then you have small little offices, smaller breakdown offices for the broadcast, radio, television, so on. So, but they always have these 2-3 buffet-sized tables up there that just have this spread of food. And then intermittently you'll have like a popcorn machine, and then you have like it looks like a vending machine, but it's just a refrigerator. You know, you just take the soda out, or you take out, you know, whatever pop or water or whatever you're drinking, you just take it out. You know, it's not like you don't pay anything. It's all free, right? But the Outback, but when Outback is a sponsor, they're going to have their food there. So he was talking about popcorn shrimp, right? And coconut shrimp. So he's talking about this coconut shrimp. He's like, I wonder if the popcorn or the shrimp, if the shrimp eats the coconut, and that makes it a coconut shrimp. And it's just kind of like this whole kind of John Madden-esque comedical breakdown of coconut shrimp. It's just like, it's hilarious, but it's buffoonery too at the same time. But it's hilarious, it's entertaining, and he still makes good. You know, he does obviously he does the color. The color guys make the jokes like that. It's hilarious. So it was last year. So hopefully they can have a repeat of something like that this year as well. So hopefully we're at that game this year. One of us. Waiting to hear back from them. But so, anyways, back to boxing. Billy Joe Saunders retains the WBO middleweight title against David Lemieux, and a pretty one-sided fight. I thought it was I think it was a good win for Bill. And David Lemieux, I think stylistically, was really why it was such a one-sided fight. So maybe that kind of made him look better than maybe he would against some other fighters. But he kind of looked Canelo-esque with the defense. A lot of stuff that I know that he has been working more on, and he wanted to emphasize more. Didn't knock him out. Was able to get the decision, a unanimous decision, and but it looked really good in the process. So, what do you make of Billy Joe Saunders? Do you think he's a guy that's going to be somewhat of a legitimate challenge against Triple G or Canelo, or is he just another guy that I should probably just hold on to that WBO as long as he can?
Well, right now, I think that the longer he waits for Gennady Golovkin, the better chance he has against Gennady Golovkin. He kind of went over this particular fight between Billy Joe Saunders and David Lemieux, and I mean, while Saunders had a good performance, it was against David Lemieux. David Lemieux is pretty much one-dimensional. There's only a few guys that he looks very good against, but when he fights somebody that can really box, then David Lemieux pretty much looks like an average fighter, and that's what happened here. He went up against Billy Joe Saunders. Saunders with a little bit of good boxing skill, could learn how to control his range and things like that. So that's what he ended up doing against David Lemieux, and ended up, cruising to a victory by doing that. So the thing is that while he looked very well against David Lemieux, I'm not sure how he would fare against the likes of a Gennady Golovkin or a Canelo Alvarez. My thing is that I feel that he wants to look for those type of fights right now. Of course, after his win, he called out Gennady Golovkin, said that, Golovkin wanted him when Saunders wasn't quite in shape, not really, fully conditioned. Now, since he's changed his regimen, he says he's looking better, he's feeling better, so he wants to go after Gennady Golovkin now. But you don't hear him saying that he would go after the likes of Jacobs or Jermell Charlo or Demetrius Andrade. Those three, I would say, can box. And when it comes to Charlo and Daniel Jacobs, those guys can box and they have power in both hands. So Saunders wouldn't want to deal with somebody that can box and have power in both hands. That's as young or younger than he is.
See,
so that's why he would prefer to go after Golovkin right now.
Yeah, Danny Jacobs is not a direction he should go right now. Because, again, when I scored the fight, and I scored the live fight, I had Daniel Jacobs beating Golovkin. I had him beating him on points. So, I mean, some people disagree with that, but that's where I had Daniel Jacobs beating Triple G on the scorecard. Now, another direction he could go to keep it in the realm of legitimate fights, he could go Chris Eubanks Jr. He could go that direction with it, And again, that's a legitimate fight. That should sell over in the UK. Two well-known guys over there. And again, it's about the business side of it there. But again, Danny Jacobs is a guy he should probably stay away from. Even though boxing fans might want to see that, Chris Eubanks is probably the better direction to go. I don't know, Dan. I mean, Dan.
Well,
some people say, get another notch under belt, fight Daniel Gale. And I don't think that's really beneficial. I don't think that was beneficial when Canelo did it. To be frank,
Yeah, that doesn't move the needle for Billy Joe Saunders. And the thing with Chris Eubank, that would be a good matchup, but that would be a rematch. But Chris Eubank he's currently occupied in the World Boxing Super Series at super middleweight. He has a big fight coming up against George Groves in the UK, and if he wins that, then he'll be in the finals later on in 2018. And by the end of 2018, he could be a unified super middleweight champion. So if Billy Joe Saunders wants to go against Chris Eubank Jr., it would have to be on the tail end of 2018, and it would be at super middleweight.
Yeah. What about Hassan? Was it Hassan? I can never remember how to pronounce his last. Nadam Nijikim. You know what I'm talking about?
Hassan I really haven't, seen much of Ndom that much since his loss to David Lemieux.
Yeah, that was
really haven't.
That was the one that That's the only
really
fight. That's the last fight. I think that's probably the only fight I really have watched him in. I saw him bits and pieces here else before watching that fight, but yeah, it's kind of. And you think Peter Quillen?
Well, the thing with Ndom, right? Oh, I forgot the thing with Ndom is that he had a fight earlier this year against Ryota Murata for the WBA regular middleweight title. Ended up winning by split decision, but then they had a rematch that was not that long after, and Murata ended up, having him retire on his stool over in Japan. So Ndom is, basically, had a fight a couple of months ago, but he ended up having the fight stopped against Ryota Murata.
And Peter Quillen?
Quillen, I think there's going to be something there for him sometime in 2018. I don't know what specifically. He did have somewhat of a return fight, but yeah, he still has to, look to see if there's anyone out there for him after this year. I mean, he, returned after a couple of, pretty much a layoff of almost 2 years against a guy that basically had a 500 record.
Because he really went up.
After that, I'd have to see what Al Heyman has for him.
Because he fought Andy Lee to a draw, which was a good fight. Then I did watch the one against Michael, what's his name? Zafara? I think it was Michael Zafara. I didn't watch that fight.
Mike Zafara.
Yeah, Mike Zafara. I didn't watch that fight. He won by KO, and then he ended up fighting Daniel Jacobs, which I did watch for the WBA title, and he lost that fight. And that's kind of where Peter Quillen kind of exits stage right for 2 years. I know the Deshaun Johnson, which I don't know anything of Deshaun Johnson. Just looking at his record, basically a 500 fighter to be nice about it. A 500 fighter career-wise. He ended up winning by a unanimous decision against. We'd have to see where he's at. I mean, that kind of looks like in the realms of, okay, maybe we can pick this guy off, but then it sounds kind of dangerous at that time too. And another guy that comes to mind is Andy Lee, kind of going back to who along those lines. I mean, Andy Lee only with 3 losses. Again, the draw to Peter Quillen, a loss to Billy Joe Saunders. Again, that was by majority decision, which was a good fight. And then Keandre Leatherwood, a unanimous decision there. Maybe we look at revisiting against an Andy Lee fight. Again, it's a title fight. Is it something you should bring back? Again, that's another one of those guys that you're looking at there within the weight class within the UK that maybe he could look at fighting against. Again, that's another guy that probably moves the needle a bit at the middleweight level for especially people that are having a rematch there within the UK. Jamel Charlo, a guy that I would probably caution against. Him fighting. But there are other belts that he could go after as well still, right?
Who would?
That Billy Joe Saunders. There's a couple of belts that he can go after. Not as sought after as either of the belts.
Because Golovkin has pretty much every major belt.
I guess.
Yeah, Golovkin has every major belt in the middleweight division, so there isn't any, much of any other option for him unless if he goes after Golovkin, like I said, or basically seeing if Canelo is available, because he's not going to fight those 3 guys, like I said. He's not going to do that.
And you can take Golovkin off the table. Obviously, the rematch is being set up for them to fight, in May?
Yeah, it's set up for May 6th. I think it's May 6th.
So, you again, take that off the table. Golovkin's not going to see that. And I would seriously doubt that that Saunders stays idle till August, September, when a fight between them could probably be worked out. He'll have to be active.
Yeah.
So the only available belts. He has the WBO, the Ring magazine, and then the European belt. That's really all he could go after right now. But he has the WBO. So there's really not a lot of people put weight in the ring belt. I mean, once upon a time, some people cared more about it than they do now, but yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, currently, Canelo is the champion, the lineal middleweight champion and ring champion. So if he's going to be occupied fighting Gennady Golovkin, then what else can Billy Joe Saunders do?
Well, he's a lineal champion because the result of the Saddam Ali Miguel Cotto fight?
No. Canelo Alvarez is the middleweight champion because he beat the previous lineal middleweight champion.
Which was
who was Cotto, who beat the previous lineal middleweight champion, was Sergio Martinez. So that's how the lineage goes with the middleweight division.
So when Cotto loses the superweight title, Saddam Ali.
No. What happened was, remember, 2015, basically around 2015 or so, you had Canelo and Cotto fighting, right? And so Cotto lost to Canelo at middleweight, and then Cotto went back down to 154 to fight August 26th, and then he won a vacant light middleweight belt on August 26th this year, and then had the fight against Saddam Ali for that light middleweight belt.
Oh, okay, yeah. Otherwise, he had to vacate it. Yeah. He showed his fight. That was his last fight. Makes sense. So there really isn't. That's just it.
I mean,
there's really. So maybe Saddam Ali. Maybe Saddam Ali might be a target.
now
Or does that not make sense?
Ali will stay there 154 pounds. And then he'll see if he'll make a voluntary defense or whatnot.
Yeah, I'm good.
But
Get one
I
title.
don't see Saddam Ali beating anybody.
Any
other title over there. He's beating Hurd. He's not beating
he's.
Jamel Charlo, and he's not beating Arizona Pilar.
You know, why do I feel like he's Kell Brook? I don't know why. I feel like it's the same guy. I don't know why. It's just like he's just protected that record. You don't think so?
Well, maybe he just won that light middleweight title. He had his only loss was at 147 pounds to Jesse Vargas, where Jesse Vargas took the shots that Saddam Ali was throwing at him in those first 3 or 4 rounds, and then turned right around and then threw back at Saddam Ali, and Saddam Ali ended up getting knocked out. So, I mean, we'll see what the direction of what Golden Boy is going to have with Saddam Ali. He's going to have a couple of voluntary defenses of that WBO belt, but those other options that are there at 154 pounds, a lot of those guys, Saddam Ali won't be able to fight because, they're all with Al Heyman, guys with Al Heyman. So, like guys like those belt holders that I talked about, all of them are managed by Al Heyman.
I thought they were all worked out with ESPN, both Golden Boy and Heyman.
Both Golden Boy and who?
PBC.
No, PBC. You don't really see PBC on the ESPN. You see Golden Boy on the ESPN. You see Top Rank on the ESPN.
No, PBC had a Friday night fight. They took over Friday night fights. So all the PBC fights that are on Friday nights are on ESPN. They have been. I don't know if that portion of the contract rights went out. Now I just see it on FS1.
Nah.
With Showtime.
Yeah, they're on FS1, man.
With Showtime.
Yeah, they're on FS1 and Showtime.
Which is a conflict because HBO is Top Rank and Golden Boy kind of bounces back and forth. I don't think they have really allegiance to the two major, from what I recall. I know they just signed something with ESPN to show telecast their fights there.
Yeah.
So as far as the middleweight division goes, it's Canelo and it's Triple G. Bill Joe Saunders is an appetizer compared to those two. Is that an accurate summation?
What were you saying in reference to Canelo Alvarez?
Canelo and Triple G are the main plate for the middleweight division, and Billy Joe Saunders is an appetizer.
Well, it's kind of looking that way. That's, Canelo Golovkin is the main fight for the middleweight division, but I think they are trying to milk that matchup as much as possible. That's why, they had the draw results in September, in their fight in September, because there really wasn't much of an, end game. They didn't like have an end result. They wouldn't be happy if either one of those guys lost first, as far as like the end result is concerned, because they wanted to save face on both sides. I think that, in the first fight, I felt that I felt that Gennady Golovkin edged it out in that first fight, but it didn't seem like they wanted to give it to him. There could be like a whole lot of backstories as to why they didn't want to give the win to Golovkin there in that fight. Also,
I had Canelo winning that fight.
It didn't seem like the full one-on-one judge wanted Canelo to win that fight. Also, to kind of give Gennady Golovkin his first professional loss of his career. I think that his overall value would have been taken down a couple pegs if they gave the decision to Canelo Alvarez in that particular fight. But to me right now, in reference to the middleweight division as a whole, there really isn't that much else for both of those fighters. You only have Billy Joe Saunders, and that's pretty much it for both Golovkin and for Canelo Alvarez. You're not going to see Gennady Golovkin have a rematch against Daniel Jacobs. That had already been dismissed immediately after the fight in March. You're not going to see Canelo fighting the likes of Daniel Jacobs or Charlo, because they're advised by Al Heyman, which Golden Boy is not going to work with Al Heyman in any sense, form, or fashion. So that kind of eliminates a lot of possibilities in the middleweight division right then and there. So it's like you have with Canelo and Golovkin, Canelo is the lineal middleweight champion, and Gennady Golovkin has most of the middleweight belts. So it's like whoever wins basically gets all of those belts. But then after that, unless if they fight Billy Joe Saunders, there's nothing else left in the middleweight division for them. So that's why I feel like here, once they have this second fight, possibly in May, that if it's another close fight, then you're going to see either, another draw or a close win by either fighter, and then you're going to see a third fight between those two before the end of the year. Don't be surprised if that happens.
So 2019, probably May of 2019, is going to be Billy Joe Saunders' first potential shot at fighting either of the two.
And that would be bad, for the middleweight division, and bad for Billy Joe Saunders that he would have to wait that long
17 months.
Get that chance.
Isn't that 17, 18 months? 18 months. Wait a year and a half. So Billy Joe Saunders, what does Billy Joe Saunders do in the 18 months before? He clearly has to stay active. And it might be more advantageous to fight 2 or 3 fights rather than just one, Because 2 or 3 fights, again, maybe fighting Andy Lee again, Charlo and Jacobs just really can't be on the table. He just needs to fight enough guys. Again, Lemieux was a top 10 guy in the middleweight by a lot of accounts. Andy Lee's top 15. Who's he fighting now? William Monroe? He seems to be their kind of the punching bag. I don't know. Martin Murray? Yeah, I don't know. That's another UK fighter.
Who fights Willie Monroe?
What's that?
Who would fight Willie Monroe?
I'm saying, does Billy Joe Saunders go at Willie Monroe?
He already fought him.
Again, I'm just saying. Again, this is the thing. Is like,
yeah, but
now he has to.
But there would be no interest in the second fight between those two because of how horrible the first fight was.
See, that's the problem that we're coming into. That now he has to kind of revisit guys. I mean, he beat Eubanks by a split decision. That's probably not going to happen again. Again, also because you said Eubanks is already moving in a different direction. Andy Lee, he beat. Again, it was an entertaining fight, but I don't really see that happening again. David Lemieux was one-sided fight. That was boring. William Monroe, again, that was a one-sided fight. It was boring. Again, those are all unanimous decisions as well. I mean, he doesn't do Jacobs, doesn't happen. Charlo doesn't happen. So we're on agreement there. I mean, it's like which direction does he go next? You know, he hasn't fought Martin yet, but Martin Murray is he a guy that people are going to want to pay to watch? I mean,
yeah,
Martin Murray really hasn't beaten people that are ultimately notable. And within his last 10 fights, he has 3 losses. Is that a guy that you can get behind and sell? I mean, his last notable fighter he fought, really, I mean, Triple G, lost to. Before that, Sergio Martinez, lost. Arthur Abram, lost.
90 seconds.
So, I mean, we got about 30 seconds before we go into overtime. 347-237-5539 if you want to call in. It's just it's a tough road for Billy Joe Saunders, you know. You can't stay inactive. But you're probably not going to fight a guy that's going to make you a ton of money. What about again, that's not going to happen.
60 seconds.
I see here Demetrius Andrade. I don't know much about him. I haven't watched any of his fights. I can't really go very far. 25-0. I guess I did. I watched this fight against Willie Nelson. He won by TKO against Willie Nelson. I think that was on a PBC fight. So outside of that, I really can't.
Are you talking about Android?
Yeah, Andrade.
10 seconds.
I mean, he did have like a fight recently, but you were talking about him potentially fighting somebody before the end of this year, but he didn't. He didn't want to do it. So they're trying to see if they can get that done for the early part of next year. I mean, I'm not sure, man. I think, that Andrade is kind of like put himself in bad situations. He had times where he could have, fought guys at the 154-pound division. He was there as a WBA regular super welterweight champion this year and didn't fight Erislandy Lara. There was a while ago where they tried to have him fight one of the Charlo brothers, but I think his dad said the money wasn't right for that particular fight, and so that kind of shut the Charlo brothers off from ever fighting Demetrius Andrade. So I don't know what his direction is going to be. He had a unanimous decision win a couple of months ago in his first fight in the middleweight division, but there's still, other options out there in the at middleweight for him. But it's just a matter of what does he want to do. Derevchenko said he was ready to fight. He's ready to fight Demetrius Andrade, and Andrade passed on it. And like I was saying before, they're going to see if they could try to make that fight again. And if they don't, then that pretty much will be on the side of Andrade if they'll make that fight.
Yeah, it's a shame. See, now that's a guy that seems like he's ducking. Because, right now, Willie Nelson's probably one of his better wins as of late. So, I don't know. Well, let's move on to on football again. We've had some interesting bowl games so far, but just kind of looking forward to some of the college football bowl games that we have coming up here in the near future. Want to get your take on some of the games that we have coming up here as well. We're only 5 days away from New Year's Eve. So, Bowl Mania is rolling forward. Let me pull this up here. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's about to hike up real soon, or pretty much today. You just have a couple of games on tonight. We just saw, I think, Duke win over Northern Illinois, and right now UCLA is playing Kansas State. So we got like a few things going down here in the college football, in the college football postseason.
Duke was a team I had picked Duke to win. I'm trying to pull up the schedule here. It's not cooperating with me. All right, I had Duke winning. In my picks, if I could get the schedule to pull up, and that was kind of one of those a little bit more of a no-brainer games, I think. Northern Illinois beat Nebraska, but that didn't really change much for me. If just kind of looking back over some of these. I watched some of the FIU Temple game. And Ohio UAB I watched for like 10 minutes. That one got out of hand quick. Wyoming, I had Wyoming winning there. That was one of the games I watched clearly because of their quarterback. So, watching Josh Allen. Who's kind of cooled in some people's minds. Tonight was the 23rd was Appalachian or USF, Texas A&M, which was a good game. I watched that whole game. USF pulled that one out. I didn't watch San Diego State Army. I had San Diego State winning that one, and then Appalachian State Toledo. I think I picked Toledo. Clearly was a bad choice. Appalachian State 34-0 there. And then Christmas Eve was Fresno State Washington. Fresno State beat Houston, which wasn't a good look for Houston. And then on tonight, live, right now, the 26th, you can catch on the ESPN or watch ESPN app, Kansas State and UCLA. They got going on over there. And right now, UCLA is up 17-7. K-State has the ball. In that one, it's still it's 1st and 10 on the UCLA 25-yard line. And it's in the third quarter. 10:28 left in the third quarter. So we're just shortly past the halfway point in that game. And I'll probably watch that game when we're off air. So this is kind of those interesting matchups. With the Big 12 team that maybe not as many people have watched this season, K-State, and UCLA, a lot of people aren't watching because it's on the West Coast. But UCLA is kind of, again, Jim Mora is gone. They replaced him with Chip Kelly. So obviously there's a lot of momentum there in UCLA to kind of finish out this season strong, so they can move into next season on a high note. But it'll be a very interesting game. I'll talk more about that next week. As far as let me scroll down the list here. Next up on the docket would be the game of irrelevance. Is that what it's called? The Irrelevance Bowl? University of Southern Mississippi and Florida State. Is this a game you're going to watch? I mean, you're kind of a Florida State fan, right? Technically?
No.
Technically, I mean... What are the numbers going to be like on this game? I know the reports came out that Florida State wasn't bowl eligible, but they were going to have them despite their ineligibility for the game or not, for the Walk-Ons Independence Bowl. And they're favored right now. ESPN's giving them an 85.6% chance of winning that game. I give them a better chance than that. What do you make of this game? Is it a waste of time game?
It looks like an early start, doesn't it?
Yeah, 1:30 tomorrow. If that counts as an early start.
I'll be at work, man. I ain't gonna be watching that game.
That's the up and down about the bowl season, you know. Some of them you can catch. Most of them you cannot. But I don't think this is one that a lot of people are going to clamor after anyways. All right. Again, that's 1:30. It's on ESPN tomorrow. The next game on the docket would be... Let's see what we got here. Arizona... That's Wednesday, yeah. Arizona, Purdue, Iowa, Boston College, and Texas, Missouri. I think these are pretty easy picks. We got Missouri over Texas, Purdue over Arizona, and Iowa over Boston College. I think it was a pretty. I think Missouri Texas could be a runaway game. Purdue Arizona could also be a runaway game. Virginia Navy probably is going to be interesting. I have Navy by a slim margin in that game, probably coming back to win. Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State is an interesting game. That's an ACC game, team and a Big 12 team on Thursday night, 5:15 on ESPN. Who do you like in that game? I would lean more towards Oklahoma State than Virginia Tech. Just after seeing how Virginia Tech played against Clemson and Miami, it just didn't look good at all. I don't know if they can fare well against another top tier, top 20 opponent. So I would favor Oklahoma State in that one.
Well, the thing is that with those two particular games that Virginia Tech had, two primetime games against Clemson, and then against Miami, home against Clemson, on the road against Miami. Both of those teams had like a front seven that really disrupted the offense of Virginia Tech. I do not think that Oklahoma State has that type of front seven that could disrupt what's going on with Virginia Tech. So I feel that the game will be a lot closer than some may realize. It's just a matter of what is going to happen with the Virginia Tech's defense against Mason Rudolph, James Washington, and the Oklahoma State offense. You have Washington there, one of the best receivers in the country. You have to see how the secondary for Virginia Tech is going to cover James Washington and the other slew of receivers that Oklahoma State has.
That's a good point. So, I mean, Virginia Tech is usually pretty good on the defensive backside. So it would be a pretty good matchup. But just to kind of see, I think you make a good point. What can Oklahoma State do along the front seven? Can they disrupt the offense the same way Miami and Clemson did? So that'll be interesting. I don't think Stanford TCU is going to be as interesting as a matchup as some will think. I think Stanford could win this game pretty easily by 2 touchdowns. But the interesting component is TCU and Peterson there have had a tendency to explode at times and really put out a whole lot of offense, which could be really detrimental for Stanford. It's going to be an interesting game to watch, though, but I think Stanford could slow down the tempo of this game enough and make it methodical enough to just wear out the TCU. I know Oklahoma did that at times against them. It was shootouts, but if you see what really beat them at the end of the game, it was the running game. They kind of end up putting them to rest. And TCU is always kind of, they don't have that sort of defense that can really stay after and get after a team that's just slowly pounding away at them. I mean, Iowa State's kind of that methodical team that would wear them down 14-7. They end up losing a shootout, but ultimately it was the run game that was beating them up. Lose to Oklahoma twice by pretty big margins. So that's, Arkansas could have done that. Arkansas went sour quick. SMU kind of went to the shootout thing. They didn't really have a chance of doing that. Oklahoma State, again, good offense, really good offense, good quarterback, good wide receiver, but lacked that run game that could really slow down or beat up TCU. West Virginia was one of those games. It's just they made less mistakes. That's all that was. It's kind of very similar teams. But it'll be very interesting to see how it plays out. But I could see Stanford very much winning this game easily by a couple touchdowns, maybe, 23, 14, 23, 18, something like that. 23-17. It'd be interesting, though. Game to watch. What do you make of it?
I mean, to me, that's going to be a key matchup with TCU's defense going up against Stanford in the running game that they have or that they utilize, against their opponents. You have, of course, Bryce Love, one of the leading rushers in the country, featured in this game. And that's going to be something to see if TCU is going to be able to bottle him up to make the quarterback for Stanford make plays there against them. Stanford, Stanford, of course, is, a team that I don't, like historically, or over the past few years. But they kind of, get up for games like this. They play the hardest, and it's a team that, has a good record or is a fairly good team, but ends up losing to teams that they're not supposed to lose to. But we're gonna find out if Stanford could make the key plays to, end up getting the win against TCU. But I think with Kenny Hill there on TCU, and then the defense coached by Gary Patterson, should be enough for them to get the win over Stanford.
All right. I think we went the opposite direction on every game so far. I don't see the trend changing on the next one. Maybe the next two. Next up, Washington State and Michigan State. Without a doubt, two teams that are very different. Michigan State, a young, kind of figured it out about midway towards the season, beat some teams that people didn't think they would or should have beat at this point. Washington State, on the other hand, is a high-powered offense, really no run game, very one-dimensional. Mike Leach has always kind of been that way. A lot of his runs are the extended handoffs or bubble screens or, short passes to set up yardage through running after the catch. That's pretty much where their runs are. That's how he utilizes the run game through his pass. A defense that's not tremendous, and one of their what's his name? Shaq. Bring it up here. Sorry, my notes are kind of slow to come up here. They're missing one of their top defenders for the first 30 minutes of the game. So it's going to be tougher for them to stop this Michigan offense. I wouldn't say that it's a high-powered offense. An offense that's really going to strike fear into many teams, but they're pretty consistent. They can go down the field, they can score, 20, 30 points pretty easily over the course of the game. They've showed that they've been able to hold in there and beat some good teams. They beat Iowa. Again, slow, methodical game. They beat Iowa by a touchdown. They ended up going to East Lansing and beating Michigan by 4. To Minnesota, who blew out Nebraska at the beginning of the year and who had a shootout with Purdue. Ended up beating them by 3 points, by field goal. So, again, they're a team, they can put up 20, 30 points on you, but more so it's the defense. The team is efficient enough to keep them in the game throughout the game. Their worst loss was to Ohio State. Ohio State and Notre Dame. Those were their 2 worst losses. Notre Dame was their 3rd game of the season. Very young team, 3rd game of the season. And then Ohio State they were just outmatched going into the horseshoe. They lost 48-3. Just couldn't get it figured out that game. After coming off of a win over Penn State just the week before. So, can they beat high-ranked teams? Yes. Can they slow down high-powered offenses? Yes. But kind of what I'm looking at here, it's a young team that's trending upward, that is good at fighting it out in close games. And I think that they can take this one-dimensional offense in Washington State and be able to, solidify a win here, especially since they're going to get a half of the ball game an opportunity to take advantage of the holes in the defense with Michigan State without their best defender. How are you looking at this one?
Was it the Michigan State one?
Yeah, Michigan State, Washington State.
Oof. Oh man. This one looks like a toss-up to me. You have Michigan State that, this season in particular, they, ended up, beating Michigan on the road. To give, I think it was Michigan's first loss that they had this season was to Michigan State. They also ended up pulling the win over Penn State after a long delay in that game, with Penn State kind of like reeling from their big game they had against Ohio State. So, I would say the Spartans had a fairly good season. They're a very disciplined team. They usually have a disciplined team there with Coach Antonio. And Washington State's just a polar opposite there with their head coach. They had a chance to get the Pac-12 North title, but just couldn't pull it out. So that was like a toss-up game to me. I'm not sure who would pull that out. You do have, I think Luke Falk's going to be playing in this game, so I'd like to see how he would do here, because I think this would be his last collegiate game before going into the NFL draft. I don't know, man. I feel like with the disciplined game that Coach Antonio has, I think Michigan State's going to be the one to pull that one out.
All right, so that's the first one we agreed on. Yeah, that's the thing is, it's going to be an interesting game. That's what I mean. Those toss-up games are usually like that. I don't know if it could live up to the Rose Bowl last year, but it's definitely going to be an interesting game, the Holiday Bowl. That game's going to be on FS1 on Thursday. Hold hold on. I'm waiting for the time to load back up here again. Again, FS1 on Thursday at... Come on. All right, doesn't want to give it to me. Thursday at 9 p.m. FS1 Thursday at 9 p.m. The next game up on the docket that I want to is that's a Friday game. Wake Forest and Texas A&M. Now this game to the casual fan might not be interesting, but Texas A&M, remember, Sumlin's out, Fisher's in. Interim coach there. Interim coaches have not fared well. On the other hand, Clausen has done a great job at Wake Forest, which isn't typically a football school lately. And I see Wake Forest winning this game. Now, I know Texas A&M has a good amount of talent on both sides of the ball there. Some guys that are definitely going to be looked at by scouts and in the draft. And they'll probably play pretty well, but I don't see Texas A&M pulling out the win here. I have Wake Forest winning by a slim margin in this game. What do you think about this one?
Wait, so you have Wake Forest winning that one?
Yeah, by a slim margin. Probably by a field goal.
I don't see it. I don't see it with Wake Forest there. I see, Texas A&M. I know that they're, going through a little bit of a transition. They're about to have, your boy out there, Coach Fisher, there very soon. But, they should still have the athletes there right now in order to beat a team like Wake Forest. So I'd rather side with Texas A&M in this one. I don't.
Do you think they're in it?
I don't see how Wake
Do you
Forest
think
could,
the players are in this game, knowing that whole coach staff's gone?
I would. Yeah. Because the thing about it is, with a team that's in the transition at the end of the season, what you want to do is, unless if you're, a senior that's going to be outgoing, that's going to have their last game there, being the Nagy, you want to give, Coach Fisher an impression that you're going to be performing pretty well once he gets everything, in there and out in the full force, come the spring. So you want to at least do something very well on the offensive side and defensive side of the ball in order to give, the coaching staff an impression that you're going to be performing very well in the 2018 season.
But do you think they're going to be in the game, is what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Why not? Yeah.
I mean, they're going against Wake Forest.
I don't see why not.
I mean, you've seen what Clausen has done with Wake Forest. And there's been games this year that people kind of saw kind of with odd feeling favored Wake Forest in games that you probably wouldn't have saw. I mean, they lost to Clemson by what? 2 touchdowns? Lost to Florida State by a touchdown. They beat Appalachian State, which is a quality win. They lost by like 10 to to Notre Dame. They lost by a touchdown or a little over maybe 10 points or something like that. They played North Carolina State close. They're ranked. Kicked the crap out of Syracuse, who I'd say had a fluke win early in the season. And they lost to Duke, but it's a Duke team that many people had some higher hopes for. I'm just saying, I don't think it's. I think that they're a better team than a lot of people want to give them credit for, and they seem to play tough in games. They got. Georgia Tech. They lost to Georgia Tech. Again, it's like all the games are a couple plays from going in their favor. I just feel like this Texas A&M game, like the stars are lined up where those couple of big plays that have went against them in some of these other games, against Georgia Tech or Clemson or Florida State or Notre Dame, or Duke, will go in their favor against Texas A&M. I feel like they feel they're playing for more than what Texas A&M is playing for. I don't know. Did I sell you on it yet? Did I sell you on Wake over the Aggies?
What's that?
Did I?
Yeah, I don't think so, man. I don't think so.
All right.
I don't think so. I'm still with the Aggies.
All right. And then let's see what we have. What game's up next? Let me pull it up here. Friday, North Carolina State. These next couple, just zoom through. I got North Carolina State over Arizona State. I have Northwestern over Kentucky. And New Mexico State. Utah State. I don't even care. I don't think there's anybody I'm watching in those. There's nobody on those two teams that I can think of that I'm watching, even for Senior Bowl or Shrine Game. I'd have to go and look, but I don't know of anybody. I probably will not be watching that game on CBS Sports Network. And then we get into Friday evening. SC and Ohio State. Now that is going to be an interesting game. Ohio State has shown that they can play like crap and that JT Barrett is not a pro quarterback. On the other hand, Sam Darnold showed that he can bail his coach out of some bad calls and his team out of some bad plays, but in the process of trying to will his team to wins, he's thrown a lot more interceptions than anybody would like to see him throw. Ultimately, 2 losses. I have USC winning this game in overtime by a touchdown. How do you see it?
Oh, in overtime, huh?
In overtime.
I don't think it'll be in regulation, but I had, USC winning as well.
I know I glazed over it. I don't know if Chubbs is going to play for North Carolina State. I would advise him not to. I don't think there's any advantage for him to play in that game. He's going to end up going to the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Game, or I have to go back and look at it. The invites for it too. I'm getting the rosters mixed up. And he's going to be in the Combine. So I don't think that there's any benefit of him playing against Arizona State, really. Truly. I mean, his team's ranked whatever, right?
Who, for Chubb? Bradley Chubb?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he could be a top 5 pick NFL draft upcoming. Whether he plays in this bowl game or not. So I think it just depends on what other teams will need out of there in those first 5 picks. Of course, we know that Cleveland has the first pick on lock, so it's just a matter of who else is out there. Maybe the Giants, possibly the 49ers. It's still like a little bit undecided as to, I would say, who is left out there that would have the record. Like I said, the Giants are in slate for number 2 pick, and then it's the Colts, the Bucks, the Texans, and then the Bears. So that could be interesting there. Maybe the Bucks can pick up somebody there like Bradley Chubb for a 4th or 5th pick.
Yeah.
Although I doubt it.
The Bucs seem to like to wait to the second round to get their pass rushers. They're pretty sound at picking in the second round.
Well, it looks like they want to wait till the second round or later to get anybody notable, so to speak. I feel like they kind of mess up their first round pick a few times. So we have to see what goes on in the off season, because there's a lot of questions with Tampa Bay in the off season.
And I don't think their coach is one of them. No,
You actually think that they are going to let go of their head coach?
No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think. No, I don't. And they shouldn't. Listen, when they had Lovie Smith as their head coach, and they said they should fire him and hire Dirk Cutter, I said, I'm not sure Dirk Cutter's ready to be a head coach or will be a quality head coach in this league. I think he's a great offensive coordinator. I don't know if that's going to translate as much to head coach. He was a great offensive coordinator. It hasn't so much translated to head coach just yet. But at the same time, I'm not in favor of just firing head coaches willy-nilly like they do. It's just people need to pump their brakes. Just like give the team an opportunity to build something. You know? I don't know. It's just the first sign that they have a bad season. It's like, our season isn't what we wanted. We're not in the playoffs. Fire him. Like, shut up. Like, look at the Steelers. All right, look at the Steelers. We can use the Steelers because there's been times they've missed the playoffs. They've had some crap seasons. They've had Roethlisberger in and out of the lineup. They've had Brown in and out of the lineup. They've had Bell in and out of the lineup. There's been a lot of issues with injury. There's been struggle in the defense. They've had historic defensive coordinator that they got rid of, and they put in somebody else. So there's been very little turnover amongst coaching staff in the last decade in Philly, in Pittsburgh. But yet, they're usually within the hunt of the playoffs. they generally figure out what they got on the team as far as their staff. Ben Roethlisberger, maybe one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, historically over this time, I mean, a lot of overlooking. Kind of caught in between greats, you know? I mean, he did play in the Super Bowl as a rookie, didn't he? Oh, no, he's been kind of phenomenal. And he's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer. So, I mean, I think people have kind of underappreciated the process, and they've looked too soon to the goal. And this happens a lot of time with erratic fan bases, you know. And then you have ownership that'll go to the whim of the fan base. Listen, as a fan base, if you want to win championships, you have to be able to be in love with the process. That's how you get there, through the process. Not by trying to find the next hot thing, you know. Not you know, looking more forward to the next one draft pick, the next 20, 21, 22-year-old that's going to change your team's history. Are you kidding me? Who looks for a 21 or 22-year-old kid to change the history of a multi-billion-dollar franchise? Like, who does that? Really? If you're in the business of looking to recent college graduates to change the entire outlook of your multi-billion-dollar franchise, you have a bigger problem than finding that next employee. I'm sorry. You know, Dirk Cutter isn't your problem. And if Tampa fans, the loudmouth ones, would take enough time to shut up and just chill, sit back, and fall in love with the process, you'd see why. You know? Is Dirk Cutter going to bring you a Super Bowl? Who knows? I don't think people saw the Rams winning games like this with Sean McVay. I mean, why would they? Sean McVay's what, 30? He's like our age. Sean McVay is our age.
He's younger than he's like your age. Yeah, he's your age.
Yeah. I mean, he's younger than me. He's 31. 31.
Oh, yeah. 31, yeah. 31, yep.
He's essentially the age of veterans in the league and the guys that are playing. Right?
Yep.
And again, some people might remember when he was in here in Tampa. You know, some people might remember when he was in Washington. He was an offensive coordinator with the Redskins. Yeah, it's kind of crazy that I mean, you see guys get success, and people don't see it. People don't see it. That's fine. That's fine. But how many people trusted the process when the Rams said, "Oh, we're hiring Sean McVay." You move our team to LA, and then you put in a coach at 30. It's not 31. Are you serious? The guy was born. I mean, the guy just had a birthday 2 days ago. He just turned 31. He literally just turned 30. His birthday is January 24th. He's a Christmas Eve, or no, it's January, next year. So he's a month from turning. He's about to turn 32. Let me get my dates straight. January 24th. He's about to turn 32. I'm almost 2 years older than him. So I don't think this is unorthodox, crazy that he's had success. It's just he figured something out, and that's just it. Now that he figured something out, the fan base is kind of behind him. The key to it all is winning. If you win, fans don't care. You know? Getting close to the playoffs, you get to the playoffs, fans are fine with that. If Dirk Cutter gets them to the playoffs next season or close to, they're fine with that. They will be. Because now their hopes is playoffs or close to. 10, 11 win seasons, 12 win seasons. That starts to get moving in the right direction. And the NFC South isn't the best division in football. It's not the worst. Atlanta wins some games, and they give up a bunch of games too. The Saints, they're never consistent against Tampa. Tampa seems to split that every year. Carolina seems to split with every year. Atlanta, they seem to split with just about every year on average. So if that's 3 wins right there, you just kind of got to look forward to what's out of conference. What's your out of division games like, and making sure that you're winning those, or split those, and then win your home games. I mean, if you're winning all of your home games, that's 8 games. That's 8 wins. That means you only have to have 3 or 4 road games that you win in order to make the playoffs. Just looking at Tampa, and Bucs fans, just listen very closely. This is how you can tell that you're closer to extending the contract of a head coach than you are to firing him. When you're losing close games and winning others by large margins. So when you beat the Bears 29-7, that's good. When you beat the Giants in a close game, you lose to the Patriots in a close game, you lose to the Cardinals in a close game, you lose to the Bills in a close game, you lose to the Panthers in a close game. Should have been a little bit closer in the game to the Saints. But you'll play them again the last game of the season, so you can try to redeem yourself. You Jets, you win. Close game. Dolphins, you win by 10. 2 scores. That's good. You lose to the Falcons. Close game. Packers, close game. Detroit Lions, close game. Falcons, again, close game. Panthers, again, close game. So when you're playing all of these close games, it's a couple plays that just didn't go your way. And you probably look back and you see a couple dumb penalties, Jameis Winston trying to force something, or maybe a couple tackles that didn't get made that should have been. And that's been the difference in the game. It isn't the coaching. The coaching is there. When you play the Patriots, right? You play the Patriots and they have to, on the last play of the game, come back and beat you to win 19-14. You're doing something right. You have a backup that can step in and win football games, clearly. just about getting your starter to continue that process of development, to getting him to a point to where he can be there all the time and stay focused. They can get Jameis Winston to stay focused, work on some of that touch. Like, he kind of showed up there towards the end of the season a little bit. It'll be better. But him controlling his outbreaks, maybe putting his contacts in, and working on some touch, that's going to be the difference. Nobody's questioning his passion or his drive or his desire, but his focus is clearly in question. So those are the things you got to work on. So, not worried about Tampa. They could go from last to first very easily next season. Same players, same coach, everything. They could go from last to first. It's just about executing. And the defensive line is just struggling in execution. So maybe look in a different direction on defensive coordinator, or even not even defensive coordinator, but somebody else to come in to help with the defensive line, particularly the pass rush. Maybe that's the direction they look at. What can they do to strengthen that defensive line and improve the pass rush? Because I'm not for sure that it's even the talent to have. I think they have. I think they have talent there on the defensive side that can, that can get it done, but it's just a matter of working some things out. I mean, they're pretty. As far as the defensive ends go, I think they're pretty young. Along as far as defensive ends go, Robert Ayers is probably the most senior guy there. Ryan Russell, a lot of guys that aren't so outstanding. Again, the biggest guy that they're missing along that defensive side, Noah. So it'll be interesting to see which way they go here this offseason. So I don't know.
Yep.
So, James,
We had like a few minutes.
Yeah, I know we only got a few minutes left. I was just taking a peek at the clock. I think we could close on that there. I know I didn't get into the NBA, but we got some podcasts and stuff this week. I can get into that a bit more. So, that'll pretty much end it for tonight. Do you have a show this week? I know it's pretty slow here at the end of the year. Or you're going to be on hiatus?
No. I had the last show of 2017 on Sunday. I won't have another one until January 14th.
Okay. Well, we will be back here next week for the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. Again, we got more bowl games that we'll end up looking at, and we'll do a special. Some special bowl game coverage for the New Year's 6 games, and in kind of a prelude of us up there and January 8th for the national championship game in Atlanta. So only a couple weeks out. Looking forward to it. So that's all we got tonight. Follow the show at the CHT on Sports. Follow James at JBZ 04-2009. Is that right? And at Boxing Source 2. And you can follow me at Matt Long Sports. Peace.
Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports. I apologize.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.